Imagine being in a hospital room, surrounded by machines and doctors on high alert, only to be transported in an instant to a place where time seems to stand still. For a mother facing severe complications during childbirth, what seemed like the end became a transformative journey. Amidst the darkness, she had a vision of her children as adults, thriving and fulfilled. In this video, you'll discover how the power of maternal love can be the key to overcoming the toughest challenges and how a near-death experience unveiled a renewed purpose and the determination to fight for life. If you've ever wondered where the true strength to protect and care for your family comes from, this story is for you. Watch until the end and feel the inspiration of a mother who found, in a vision of the future, the motivation to return and fight. The hospital room was lit by a cold, sterile light, reflecting the urgency that filled it. Alice lay on the bed, taking deep breaths, trying to control the rising anxiety. Sweat trickled down her forehead, mingling with the tears that threatened to fall. Around her, doctors and nurses moved with quick, calculated steps, their voices blending into a near-hypnotic murmur. Her husband, Mark, held her hand tightly, his eyes darkened with worry. It felt as though time had slowed down, compressing all the fear and expectation into each heartbeat. For a brief moment, Alice closed her eyes, seeking solace in a single thought. Her 3 children, Clara, Lucas, and Michael, were waiting for her at home, unaware of what was happening. A tightness gripped her chest, a mixture of desperate love and overwhelming fear. Memories of their smiles, of playing in the yard, surfaced with such clarity that she gasped. She knew she had to be strong, but a feeling of unease began to spread, slow and relentless like a shadow. Suddenly, the tone of the room shifted. The voices grew more tense, technical terms were spoken urgently, and the doctor's expression, Dr. Richard, hardened. "We need to act fast," he said, and those words echoed in Alice's mind like a funeral bell. Mark's gaze faltered, hope giving way to barely contained panic. Alice tried to squeeze his hand more firmly, but her body succumbed to exhaustion. A wave of fear ran down her spine, cold and unforgiving. She felt as though she stood on the edge of a precipice, reality beginning to blur as her consciousness wavered between the room's light and the darkness that threatened to consume her. A distant sound, like a muffled drumbeat, filled her mind. The outside world began to fade, and the last thing Alice saw before everything went dark was Mark's expression, now distant and infinitely sad. She knew with a chilling certainty that something terribly wrong was happening. The sound of the monitors in the background blended with the chaos, and suddenly, the room vanished from her sight, leaving only an absolute silence. The silence was almost tangible. Alice opened her eyes and, to her surprise, did not find the cold glare of the hospital room. Instead, she was enveloped in a soft golden light that seemed to emanate from everywhere. The sense of peace was so profound that, for a moment, she wondered if she was still alive. There was no pain, only a weightless feeling she had never experienced before. The atmosphere was welcoming, like an invisible embrace surrounding her body and soul. She looked around, and everything seemed to float in gentle hues of blue and gold. There was a serenity that resonated in every particle of the space, and the tension that had once gripped her chest was now just a distant memory. Alice felt an unexplainable connection with her surroundings, as if she were a part of it, as if she had always belonged there. It was then, amidst that ethereal atmosphere, that a scene began to form before her. The images unfolded like a movie, and Alice held her breath as she recognized her children. Clara, now grown, smiled as she read to a group of children in a sunlit classroom. Lucas, dressed in a suit with an air of confidence, stepped onto a stage to receive a scientific research award. And Michael, the youngest, danced in a studio, his face alight with contagious happiness. Each vision sent a wave of emotion through her, a mix of joy, longing, and pride. Alice felt every beat of their hearts as if it were her own, and tears streamed down her face, though she couldn't explain how it was possible in that state. The sight of her children, so full and happy, filled her with a warmth that dispelled any fear. The space around her pulsed with a living energy, as if responding to Alice's emotions. She knew she was at a threshold, a point between life and something beyond. And at that moment, a soft, familiar voice echoed in her mind, They need you." Alice felt her heart tighten. The peace that surrounded her began to give way to a deeper call, a reminder that her journey was not yet over. She took a deep breath, letting that vision of love and hope fill her, and she knew without a doubt that there was still something she needed to do. The images before me became more vivid, as if I could feel the texture of the reality unfolding in front of me. Clara stood in front of a room full of children, each with eyes shining with curiosity as she read a story. Her smile was radiant, exuding a tenderness that made my heart swell with pride. I remembered the nights when she would beg for just one more page before bedtime, and now there she was, spreading that same love for reading and inspiring other children. The scene shifted smoothly, like a breeze sweeping across a field, and I saw Lucas, now grown, his face lit with an expression of satisfaction. He held a crystal star-shaped trophy, and applause echoed around him. My heart was filled with overwhelming warmth as I watched him receive an important award for scientific research that I knew was the result of years of dedication and hard work. The curious boy who used to take apart toys to figure out how they worked had transformed into a visionary young man. I felt pride overflowing, mixed with a twinge of longing for not having witnessed each of those moments up close. Before I could fully immerse myself in that emotion, the next scene appeared like a whisper. Michael, the youngest, spun across a dance studio with a grace that made me hold my breath. The music seemed to flow through his body, and each movement was an expression of freedom and joy. He laughed as he finished a complex move, and the echo of his childhood laughter filled my heart with delight. Michael had always been the most free-spirited and creative of the family, and seeing him this way, fulfilled and in his element, brought me a mix of relief and realization. Each scene was a window into a future I might never have known, but now felt more real than any memory. I felt the weight of a love so deep that it made every cell in my body vibrate. These images weren't just visions, they were a promise of everything that was to come and, in some way, that I was still a part of. It was that thought that pulled me away from the remnants of peace that tried to envelop me. They need you. The words echoed again, like a distant melody. I felt a lump in my throat, and the tears now flowed freely down my face. It was as if the essence of who I was, who I had always been as a mother, was being reminded of the purest and truest purpose. With each image, I understood that I wasn't just observing their future, I was feeling the hope, the longing, and the love that would always be part of me. As the ethereal space pulsed around me, I realized that what connected this world and the next was the promise of eternal love. My heart knew, even without comprehending all the rules that governed this space between worlds, that I had to fight. The peace of the beyond was comforting, but life, with all its imperfections and challenges, was where I belonged. The vision of my children, accomplished, happy, living their fullest lives, was the beacon that guided my choice. The decision was made. I knew that, as tempting as it was to stay, I had to return. For them. For us. For a moment that felt like an eternity, the peace surrounding me battled against the weight of responsibility that began to resurface within me. The silence that enveloped everything was like a refuge, a promise of rest and tranquility I hadn't felt in years. The pain, the worries, the sleepless nights, all seemed distant and irrelevant there. But along with that peace came guilt. A soft yet persistent shadow, reminding me that the love binding me to my children was stronger than any comfort I could find in that place. I closed my eyes, and the image of Clara, Lucas, and Michael appeared again, so vivid and intense that I felt my chest tighten. The peace of the beyond was a powerful temptation, a whisper that promised release and rest. But with it came a more subtle and painfully familiar voice echoing inside me, the responsibility of a mother. I remembered the nights when Clara would wake up frightened by nightmares, and I would cradle her until sleep wrapped around her again. I thought of Lucas, with his endless curiosity, always asking me about the world and how things worked. And Michael, whose infectious laughter could chase away any sadness. The love I felt for them now seemed as tangible as the air I breathed. Each memory brought a wave of warmth and pain, proof that, as comforting as that place might be, the true strength in my life lay in the struggle, in the sacrifice, in the act of being present. They need you. The voice whispered again, but this time it felt like it came from within me, no longer a suggestion but a certainty. I could see the duality, the promise of eternal rest against the promise of a love that transcends life itself. The dilemma tore at me. For an instant, I allowed myself to yield to the temptation of wanting to stay. Here, there was no pain, no uncertainty. But the memory of Clara reading to the children, of Lucas receiving his award, and of Michael dancing freely made me realize that my presence was part of it all. It wasn't just a choice to remain in peace. It was a choice to live for hope and for the moments still to come, for those who still needed me. I realized that a mother's love was a force that moved mountains, that crossed barriers, and that, in that moment, was pulling me back to life with an intensity one didn't know I possessed. With a final sigh of surrender, I let the peace of that place slip through my fingers like fine sand. The world around me began to fade, and in its place, I felt the familiar weight of my body and the distant thud of my heart, slow and hesitant, but alive. The decision to return brought a sudden shift. The soft, comforting light around me began to dissolve, replaced by a familiar, heavy weight pressing against my chest. The soothing warmth of that other world was substituted by a sharp, throbbing pain. A wave of effort surged through every cell of my body, as if I were swimming against an invisible, powerful current. The sound of machines and voices in the background came back, first as a distant whisper and then, all at once, with deafening clarity. My eyes opened slowly, and the cold light of the hospital became my reality again. I felt my breathing, hesitant, a blend of breaking and igniting. The faces of those around me moved in slow motion, but among them, Mark stood out. His eyes, filled with tears and disbelief, met mine. He held my hand with a gentleness that made my heart ache with tenderness. "Hello," I murmured, my voice hoarse and frail, but enough to break the silence in the room. Mark's eyes widened, and he squeezed my hand tighter. The tears he had been holding back finally spilled over as he whispered, "You came back. You came back to us." The movement around me intensified, with the medical team checking my vital signs and adjusting the equipment. But my focus was drawn to one point, the door that opened, and through it, 3 familiar faces peeked in, hesitant. Clara, Lucas, and Michael stood there, their eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and hope. Seeing those faces, the same ones that had illuminated my vision in that space between worlds, made my heart beat with renewed strength. Tears streamed freely down my face, and a weak but genuine smile appeared. The warmth of the love that had brought me back filled every corner of my being. I was back, not just to live, but to embrace every moment, every smile, and every challenge that lay ahead. This was the true victory, returning for them with a new strength that I knew deep down had come from a place beyond understanding. The days that followed my return were a true test of endurance. The pain surrounding me wasn't just physical, it was emotional, intense, and deep. My body was fragile, and every movement required exhausting effort. The feeling of being trapped between fatigue and the need to fight was constant. I looked at my trembling hands and felt the weight of exhaustion take over, but something inside me, something far greater than the fatigue, pushed me forward. Visits from Clara, Lucas, and Michael were my anchor. Each of their smiles, each look of concern and hope, renewed the strength I thought I had lost. There were moments when doubt crept in, making me question whether I would truly be able to regain all that I had left behind. But then I remembered the vision I had, the sight of each of them happy and fulfilled, and the love I felt served as fuel for my spirit. The small milestones became victories, getting out of bed, taking those first steps, feeling Mark's comforting presence beside me as he whispered words of encouragement. The nights were the hardest, when the silence brought back memories of what I had nearly lost. But even in those moments, I would close my eyes and relive that vision of hope. I realized that my recovery was not just physical, but part of a deeper journey. Each tear, each sigh of pain, was also a reminder of why I had chosen to come back. I discovered that maternal love knows no bounds. It is the silent force that made me, and would continue to make me, fight every day. The first days after my recovery were marked by a new perspective on life. Every small gesture that once felt like part of the daily routine now carried profound meaning. Watching Clara drawing at the table, hearing Lucas ask curious questions about the universe, and feeling Michael's tight hug after school. Each moment was a gift, a living reminder of why I chose to come back. I discovered that life is built in these quiet, precious moments. The cup of tea shared with Mark at sunset, the laughter during family dinners, and even the moments of exhaustion became reasons for gratitude. The experience I went through taught me that true wealth isn't found in grand achievements, but in being present, in giving and receiving love unconditionally. Maternal love, I realized, is a force so powerful that it transcends visible and invisible barriers. It is a flame that never goes out, even in the face of darkness. And that flame now illuminated all my days, reminding me that no matter how many challenges I might still face, I had within me the strength to overcome them. With each step, each shared smile, I understood that living is more than just existing. It is cherishing every moment with those we love. And as I gently stroked Michael's head resting in my lap, I knew that the promise I made to myself in that space between worlds had been fulfilled. I was here, whole, loving, and being loved, ready to embrace everything life still had to offer. The experience I went through profoundly changed the way I view life. Every moment, no matter how simple, gained a special meaning. Breakfast with Mark, the sound of Clara, Lucas, and Michael's laughter, even the everyday chores that once seemed mundane, were now filled with gratitude. I realized that life isn't measured by grand events, but by being present in the little things. The impact of that journey showed me that maternal love is the most powerful force that exists. It anchored me in the darkness and brought me back to the light. It was the memory of my children's laughter, their achievements, and their essence that made me choose to fight, even when everything felt lost. This love, so deep and unconditional, transcends any obstacle and drives us to overcome challenges that once seemed impossible. Over time, I realized that my story wasn't just about surviving, but about living fully and mindfully. Every hug, every word of affection, every glance shared with my children and my husband became a constant reminder of why I was there. And this realization, so simple yet powerful, is something I hope everyone can find in their own lives. So, I encourage you to cherish the moments with those you love and find strength in your deepest bonds. Remember that love, especially the love we give and receive in family, is the foundation of true happiness. Did you enjoy the video? Don't forget to leave a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel to receive more content like this. Stay tuned for our upcoming videos with tips and strategies to enhance your journey.